Working with a co-author can help make the writing process a whole lot easier because you have two heads are better than one. On today's episode, you'll learn how to work effectively with a co-author. Bob Burg, welcome to the Write Your Book in the Flesh podcast with Dan Janal. We're delighted to have you here. Everyone knows who Bob Burg is, but you may not know how extensive his influence is. His book, The Go-Giver, has sold more than 1 million copies. And over the last 25, 30 years, it has stayed on the top of bestsellers lists. It's been translated to more than 30 languages. It was rated number 10 on Inc. magazine's list of most motivational books ever written. And just on and on. Just not many people can say they sold 1 million copies. So welcome, Bob.
Hey, thank you, Dan. It's great to be with you. As you know, you're one of my real life action heroes, and I was following your works back in the 90s when you were when you had your first book on marketing through the internet, which everybody had to have. That was on everyone's bookshelf.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Bob. It's a pleasure. Bob, you are a co-author and of one of the best books of all time, and you freely give credit to John David Mann for helping turn your ideas into the book that it became. So let's talk about that process, because you're the subject matter expert. How did you decide that you were not the right person to turn this into a business fable, or needed help with this process?
Well, I'm a how-to author, so that's the first thing. So writing a business parable just is not in my strength zone. I can tell a story from stage because all you do is take a story and you tell it, right? I mean, that's it. But that's different from writing a parable, which is, by definition, it is a work of fiction, even though it includes principles that are true, and you can put stories that actually happened in there. It's still a work of fiction. So Endless Referrals, my first book, that was a how-to, but I'd always wanted to be part of a parable. Fortunately, in the early 2000s, I met John David Mann because he was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write for. And he, even back then, had an amazing reputation as a fantastic author. And so I just approached him with this idea. The interesting thing is John was a great entrepreneur himself. And so while, I get so much credit for the laws and principles, John was right there. It was both of us in that. He just happened to be also the writer. So the credit that I give John David Mann is well deserved, believe me.
Okay. So this grew out of a personal relationship. It wasn't a cattle call. It wasn't looking on the internet. It was all comes down to relationships.
Interesting that you say that, because when I asked him about this, he was very busy at the time. I mean, he still had a lot of things going on. And he said to his, at the time, fiance, now his lovely wife, Anna, he said to her, I really don't want to take on another project right now, but it's Bob. How do I just say no without at least exploring it? I mean, we're friends. Right. So it was all about the relationship. If we didn't have that relationship, this wouldn't have happened, because they wouldn't have taken that 4-hour drive they were visiting Anna's mom in Western Florida, on the west coast of Florida. And they decided to take a 4-hour drive one afternoon. We had a 3-hour dinner discussing the book. So it never would have happened had the relationship not been there.
Very cool. Why did you decide on a business fable instead of the how-to format that you were so comfortable with?
Yeah, because I think that stories really connect on a deeper level than a how-to book. I love how-to, but I love writing. I don't like writing them. I like having written them, but I enjoy reading how-to books, and I enjoy reading parables. I just think that I just think stories connect on such a heart-to-heart level. And since I'd been in sales, I'd always enjoyed parables, whether it was the long form Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World, or the shorter Klassen's Richest Man in Babylon, or then, in the 70s, you had Doctors Blanchard and Johnson, the 1 Minute series. Now you have great people, Andrea Waltz, Richard Fenton, Chris Widener, John Gordon. I have all these people, and I love all those parables. I just, you get into the story, you connect with it, you connect with the author, and you just take in the information. So I thought, I'd love to be able to do this with the basic source material and Endless Referrals. And then, John, of course, took it to a whole new level.
Great. Now, Endless Referrals has numerous ideas, and you, being a salesperson in the Hall of Fame for speakers, you have zillions of ideas that can help people improve their lives. How did you decide on the top 5 principles in the Go Giver?
Yeah, John and I both have studied success for our entire business lives. As a writer, John has had the opportunity to interview some of the most successful people in the world. And as a speaker, I've gotten to appear on stage with some of the most successful people in the world. And I'm curious, and John's curious. And so we're always asking questions. Plus, we both read lots of biographies and autobiographies about success and successful people. So really what we did is we got together and said, what are the basic principles that successful people have always used, even if they didn't know they were using them? Many people just do it intuitively and they didn't even know that that's what they were doing. But what are those 5 things that people did each and every time in order to have sustainable success? And so we kind of, we have to say that the laws wrote themselves, but they kind of didn't, because we also knew, right, the basic ideas of it. And so, starting with value, because you just, in any market-based exchange, there's got to be an exchange of value, and it's up to that salesperson to place the focus on helping the other person and being able to communicate that value. Right. And then, the compensation, which now, well, you've got to touch the lives of a lot of people. And then, so each one kind of built on top of the other. And if you take even one of those 5 laws away, a person can have some success, but cannot have that stratospheric success we talk about in the book.
So is 5 a magic number? Was that the number you were shooting for, or you just worked through your process and realized that it happened to be 5?
I'm not sure exactly, but I think we kind of thought there would be 5, because we didn't, there couldn't be too many, but there couldn't be too. And I think it just
that's where I was going, because we all have so much content and we all think it's wonderful. Where do we draw the line?
Right, exactly.
Where readers just say too much already.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the process of turning your ideas into that story with, rising action, falling action, the mentor and such like that. Did you follow a prescribed script or a format of storytelling, or how did that whole process turn from subject matter material into great storytelling?
Yeah, and again, for that, and I hate to sound repetitive, but that's where I really credit John,
Okay.
for doing that. So
okay,
we would go through each, yeah.
Okay, so let's describe that process, the day-to-day work process. How did you give information to John? How did it come back to you? How was the editing process? Tell us about some of the ins and outs of working effectively with a co-author.
Yeah, so together we had the basic idea down as far as what we wanted to communicate. We knew who the characters were and their basic attributes. And then John would write a scene and he would send it to me, and I'd go through it and we go back and forth. And I mean, every page, every paragraph, every sentence, every line, every word. I mean, we just kept, going through. But again, he's so good at what he does. It's like you read it and you say, wow, this guy is. And so, but he was also so humble, because, a guy with that much talent, you think, well, if you say so, is he going to be offended? But he never was. His idea was he wanted to make this the best book he possibly could. So yeah, the conversations we had back and forth were just wonderful. And the goal was just to take everything that was down there and just make it as good as we could, or as he says, more gooder.
Great. Let's talk about that process again. How long did it take from start to finish? Was there rewriting involved, or did you go like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 just flowed naturally, or did you say get to chapter 4 and say, oh my gosh, this changes everything, we have to go back and revise things?
No, there was rewriting, but the whole process of the writing only took a few months. The longest part was actually finding the publisher, because we had a great agent, and she did a wonderful job. But we got turned down by 24 New York publishing houses before we finally the fifth one, which turned Penguin Random House Portfolio, a division of Penguin Random House, took us on, and they turned out to be a magnificent publishing partner. So, all in the right time. But part of that also of the rejections were good learning experiences, because, you took some of them and it was just, well, we're not interested in a parable. Okay, well, that's not an objection. That's a condition. They're just, some was, we don't think there's room for another parable, in the world. Some was, it was just not, what were those fine. And we realized that we're going to have those. But then there are the ones that had critiques on the story that, we had to, John and I knew we had to look at these and allow ourselves to, put our egos aside and say, do they have a point? Right. And so we would ask ourselves that, then we'd sort of put it out to our small brain trust team go-giver, right? And ask them. And sometimes they were really, sometimes we didn't change anything, but sometimes we did. And we reworked it. But here was the biggest thing. And you won't be surprised to hear this. And I'm sure neither will your students, because you've taught them this. Big thing was one of them said, or a couple of them said, that they weren't impressed enough with our platform. And as we all know, what platform means is, how many people do you know are going to buy your book just because you're you? Right. And what it was, and they were right, we did not communicate effectively our platform. So I went back and I did a whole new video of, which demonstrated and communicated the platform in a much better, much more persuasive way. So that was very important. So, but had we not been open to these critiques, we would have just blown it off and said, they just don't know what they're missing, that sort of thing.
Oh, great answer. I was going to make a snide comment and say, you got the last laugh because 24 of those publishers are now out of business, but I wouldn't say that.
Nah, probably not.
And the 25th made millions of dollars on your book.
Well, they like us, but we like them too.
Okay, sure. So let's talk about a little bit of the marketing and your platform. When the book first came out, you were pretty well known in certain sales circles, but this book has been translated into numerous languages and numerous continents. I picked up a copy I have my own copy, of course, but I saw a recent copy in the bookstore, and the forward is by Ariel Huffington, and it's like, the level of celebrity that you have with this book is just amazing. So how did you start to market that book from ground zero?
Well, I'm kind of a believer in doing a few things right and doing them consistently, and doing the things that you enjoy doing, because it's really hard to sustain doing something you don't like doing, right? So at the beginning, we were writing a lot of articles, and of course, John did the legwork of a lot of that, doing a lot of interviews, doing a lot of guest blogs, doing a lot of the podcast, going on TV, all those things. But we never stopped doing those things, such as podcasts. I continue to do probably, at least one, maybe two podcasts a day during the week to promote this book. And the book's been out since 2008. So, it's not stopping for me. It's something I've done continually. When I speak at events, it's a lot of times on this topic, and whether a lot of books get sold at the event or not, or people just take it along or whatever, it's all part of the whole process. When I had a podcast, which I had for about 5 years, it was the Go-Giver podcast. So it stayed on brand, and everything got brought back to that site. We have my business partner, Kathy Janal, and I have the Go-Giver Success Alliance, again, branding the Go-Giver, Go-Giver Success Alliance. So, and we have the and all the different things we do. So everything keeps coming back, keeps the name in front, keeps coming back, but the work is there, the consistent daily action that keeps this going.
Fantastic, Bob. That's great information on how you created this book. Thank you, Bob. You've given us a lot of great information today. And thanks, everyone, for listening. You can find more than 200 other episodes of Write Your Book in a Flash with Dan Janal on this YouTube channel. Check them out.